All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are taking a uniquely cinematic, almost anime-inspired journey through one of the most remarkable, genuinely world-changing lives of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. Now, we're not just going to read down a timeline today. We are going to visually explore his path as a deeply emotional descent and ascent through history, and really unpack those incredible philosophies he developed along the way.
So picture this. We're dropping right into the roaring, ecstatic crowds of May 10, 1994. Mandela stands before the entire world and declares those iconic words, "Never, never, and never again." This historic day marked what he famously called a glorious human achievement, the birth of a rainbow nation. But, to really grasp the staggering weight of that achievement, we absolutely have to contrast it with the dark, heavy reality that preceded it, the extraordinary human disaster of the apartheid regime.
Section 1. The Glorious Human Achievement.
Imagine this as a cinematic hard cut. We're standing in the lovely sandstone amphitheater of the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Now, for nearly a century, this exact spot was the exclusive seat of white supremacy. It was literally where the harsh machinery of racial segregation was planned out and executed. But look at the profound irony unfolding here. The highest military generals and police chiefs, chests just completely covered in medals and ribbons, step up to salute the new president. These are the exact same men who, just a few short years earlier, would have arrested him without a second thought. This salute, it's a monumental shift in loyalty, a crystal-clear demonstration of the military pledging itself to a free, newly elected democracy.
But to truly deeply feel the emotional weight of this triumph, we've got to rewind the tape of history. We're going to travel backward through his life, descending from the bright, triumphant light of this 1994 victory, way back into the dark chill of 1964 on Robben Island. Then, further back to his radicalization in the African National Congress Youth League in 1944. And finally, all the way back to his seemingly innocent childhood in the Transkei in 1918. So let's step back in time together.
Section 2. The Depths of Oppression.
We're shifting our tone a bit here as we rewind into the darkest chapter of his life. Imagine the damp, bone-cramping chill of a tiny cell on Robben Island. This is where Mandela spent the bulk of his 27 years in prison. It's a place where the blinding glare of the limestone quarry was literally so severe it permanently damaged the prisoner's eyesight. The apartheid regime was, without a doubt, one of the harshest, most inhumane systems the world has ever seen, meticulously designed to strip away the basic human rights, equality, and dignity of Black South Africans. But here is a fascinating, almost unbelievable twist of history hidden right in that darkness. All those decades of oppression actually had a completely unintended effect. It inadvertently forged unbreakable leaders. It produced patriots of just extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity, men like Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu, who risked absolutely everything. Mandela realized that while South Africa is incredibly rich in minerals and gems beneath its soil, its greatest, truest wealth is actually its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds.
And it was these very comrades who shaped Mandela's fundamental understanding of bravery. He watched them risk their lives standing up to unimaginable attacks and torture without breaking. And that led him to this profound realization. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man isn't the guy who doesn't feel afraid. No way. The brave man is the one who actively conquers that fear.
Section 3. The Hunger for Freedom.
So, rewinding the clock a little further back to his youth in Johannesburg, we find a highly educated young man who's just beginning to experience the suffocating everyday realities of urban apartheid. We're talking the overcrowding, the incessant pass raids, the crushing poverty that really defined the lives of urban Africans back then. Now, initially, his desires were mostly focused on himself, what he called transitory freedoms, the simple freedom to stay out at night or just read what he wanted. But as he matured, he yearned for honorable freedoms, achieving his potential, earning his keep, having a family. He wanted what everyone wants, right? But he soon realized these basic rights were systemically denied to all Black South Africans. And that was it. That was the spark. That was the exact moment his personal hunger for freedom evolved into a much, much greater hunger for the freedom of all his people. This realization sparked an absolutely extraordinary personal transformation. Joining the African National Congress completely animated his life. That overriding desire to see his people live with dignity, it took a frightened young lawyer and transformed him into a bold revolutionary. It actually drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal in the eyes of the state. And tragically, it forced a family-loving husband to just disappear into a twilight existence of secrecy, rebellion, and a life completely on the run. Section 4. An illusion of boyhood. Okay, we've reached our final flashback, taking us all the way back to the serene, totally innocent days of his childhood in the Transkei region. It's a stark, almost poetic contrast to those concrete prison cells and intense city protests we were just looking at. Imagine this vivid, beautiful theater of his youth. As a boy, he felt completely free. Free to run in the wide fields near his mother's hut, free to swim in the clear village streams, free to roast mealies under a vast starry night, and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls. As long as he obeyed his father and the customs of his tribe, he was untroubled. But, and this is the heartbreaking part he'd later discover, this boyhood freedom was merely a beautiful illusion. His freedom had actually already been taken from him before he was even old enough to realize it.
Section 5. The twin obligations.
Bringing all these temporal threads back together, we arrive at the absolute core philosophical pillars of his lifelong struggle. What happens when a man is literally torn between two fundamental human duties? Mandela observed that every single human being has twin obligations. You have a duty to your family, your parents, spouse, children, and you have a duty to your country and your community. Now, in a civil, humane society, you can fulfill both according to your abilities. But under the laws of apartheid, fulfilling both was entirely impossible for a Black South African. If you tried to live as a normal human being and provide for your family, you were punished and isolated. But if you tried to serve your people, you were ripped away from your home and forced into exile or prison. This system forced a tragic, truly agonizing choice. In attempting to serve his people, Mandela found he was literally prevented from fulfilling his obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband.
And it was this agonizing choice that led to one of the most universally powerful realizations in modern history. The chains of apartheid didn't just bind the oppressed. No, Mandela understood that the oppressor is equally robbed of their humanity. While the oppressed are violently robbed of their dignity and lawful rights, the person who actually takes away another's freedom becomes a prisoner themselves, locked tightly behind the heavy-armed bars of prejudice, hatred, and narrow-mindedness. It's a brilliant, completely symmetrical way to look at human rights.
Which brings us right to his ultimate definition of true freedom. Freedom isn't just about throwing off your own physical chains. It's about living in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Freedom is completely indivisible. Mandela realized that the chains on any one of his people were the chains on him, and therefore true liberation meant you absolutely had to free both the captive and the jailer. You cannot have a truly free society while anyone at all, remains bound by either the physical chains of oppression or the mental chains of hatred. As our cinematic journey through his long walk concludes right back in the triumphant light of that 1994 inauguration, we are left with a pretty provocative question. If the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed, how do we break the unseen chains of prejudice in our own societies today? It's a powerful, enduring challenge that Mandela left for all of humanity, and it proves his philosophy is just as incredibly relevant right now as it was back then. I really want you to take a moment and think deeply about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I'll leave you to ponder that vital question. Catch you next time.